Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Next Drift. On this episode, I'm introducing our new how-to series. We're going to explore Plum Gut. I'm going to tell you when to fish it, how to fish it, and what you can expect to catch. Stay tuned.
All know me. Know how I earn a living.
Before we start exploring Plum Gut, I'd like to take a moment and ask you to click that like button, click the subscribe button, and click the notification bell. I'd also like to welcome you to join our Patreon page. I produce a lot of exclusive member-only content, including fishing reports, GPS waypoints, live tracking on Navionics, and a whole bunch more. So please take a moment, check out the Patreon page in the link below, and I really appreciate your membership. Let's get into it. And here we have the famous Plum Gut. Plum Gut, or the Gut as it's referred to amongst fishermen, is located between the infamous Plum Island and Orient Point, New York. It's a very, very popular place from the middle of May until the middle or end of October. What's really unique about Plum Gut is the rip line, the shallow ridge that's created between Orient Point and the tip of Plum Island. It creates a funnel, or a migration route, for game fish to feed on bait fish and other sorts of prey that get funneled through there during the incoming and outgoing tides. It's definitely a place that you want to be careful of, though. On the wrong day, or if there's a new and full moon and the wind's blowing the right way, it can get extremely rough, very much like its sister location, the Race. Let's zoom in and take a closer look at the Gut. So as you can see here, we'll start over on the Orient Point side. This is Orient Point, New York. And out here is the Orient Point Lighthouse. And you'll see this when you pull up to it. This area here, I definitely want to warn you about, is extremely shallow. You do not want to, under any circumstances, drive between Orient Point and the lighthouse. This area here you want to avoid at all costs. Many shallow rocks, as you can see, and this is a very dangerous area. So make sure you keep your boat on the outside of the lighthouse. This section here, from the lighthouse all the way over to the tip of Plum Island, is where we want to fish. Some of the best places to fish are right out here on this drift, either on an incoming or outgoing tide, or straight through the middle here. And I'll show you on the Navionics map a little bit better of what the underwater contours look like. Usually you want to fish right out in here near Midway Shoal, and then over at middle ground, closer to the point of Plum Island itself. Again, this is a very popular location for recreational fishermen and party boats, so you definitely want to be respectful and careful of the other people that are fishing there. You also want to make sure that you are paying close attention to the Orient Point ferry that comes right through here. There are two ferries that operate from Orient Point to New London, Connecticut, and they will not stop if you're in the way, so make sure you keep an eye out for them as well. So let's get into the contour and topography of Plum Gut. Over here you see we have Orient Point. Over here is the tip of Plum Island, and in the middle we have our two main pieces of structure that we're fishing. So let's start over near the lighthouse. This is one of my favorite areas to drift. Like I said, you do have to be very careful. It's shallow up here. I usually like to drift right off of this ledge right here. A lot of times during the low tide or the end of the outgoing tide, a lot of the fish will kind of stack up right over here off the end of this little hump. If we move further towards the center, you can see the big channel that runs through here. This is actually, believe it or not, it's an ancient riverbed that ran through here back before the glaciers had carved out Long Island Sound. If you look over here, a lot of people ask me about this. You see this great big deep hole where it drops off to 348, 350 feet deep. And you can see it's just a great big bowl. If you look at it on the Navionics app on your phone with the relief shading, it's really cool. You can see how deep it actually is. But this was an ancient waterfall, and you can see where the river flowed in right here, and the water fell right down through this this channel right here and into the deep hole. So this was an ancient waterfall, which is pretty neat. But what that forms, this old river channel forms, is this ridge, this shallow ridge that's in about 40 to 60 feet of water. And the fish will stack up right on this line, either on the outgoing or incoming tide. So a lot of times on an incoming tide, we'll start up right about, say, in here. We'll be drifting back and we'll wait to be getting bites along the rip line, either right up here or a little bit behind it. Same thing goes on the outgoing tide. Usually you're going to start your drift right up about, say, in this area, and you're going to drift right over the top of this, and the fish will be sitting just at the rip line itself, or right out in front of it. This is a great spot. There is a ton of snags. It's definitely something you want to be careful of. There's so much, God knows how many millions of pounds of lead are stuck at the bottom. But this is very rocky, it's very sharp, and if you leave your lure or bait on the bottom too long, 100% of the time it's going to get hung up. So be cognizant of that. As you can see over here, more towards the tip of Plum Island, there's another ridge that runs up here. This is called Middle Ground. And this is a great drift. Right along through here, the fish will sit right on the back side of this deeper ledge or on the front of it. We've caught fish all along here. And the reason is because the bait is running through here when the tide's pushing through. And that's the big premise behind why we want to fish these types of rip lines, of shoals. Because the bait is getting pushed through this big funnel right here, and stripers, bluefish, whatever else is swimming down there is waiting for that bait to come by. So that's kind of the topography. It's pretty simple when you kind of look at it on the map, and you can pick out where you need to fish. But any of these sections here, if you go to them, you're going to catch fish. So let's talk about some of the lures and techniques that I like to use at the Gut. My first and favorite way to catch them is with a diamond jig, and I like a hammered diamond jig. I use a 10 or 12 ounce lure. I very rarely go down to an 8. I like to put a 7 or 8/0 Siwash hook on it as well, and I usually use it on 60-pound test mono that I double up with an overhand knot on about a 3-foot long section, and then tie it using a double pits-in knot. It's my favorite way to catch them. You can catch bluefish, you can catch stripers. It's a lot of fun, and you're pretty much guaranteed success. The only thing you want to make sure you do is that when you drop it down to the bottom, as soon as you hit the bottom, engage the reel, crank it 10 times as fast as you can, and drop it back down. We call it diamond reeling, not diamond jigging, because you really don't want to jig these lures. You would just want to reel them. Another great technique for the Gut is the 3-way bucktail rig. You have a 3-way swivel. On one end of the 3-way swivel, you have a 4 to 8 foot long leader of either 40 to 80. You can even go up to a 100-pound test leader on it. And at the end of that, you have your either 1 ounce or 1.5 ounce, 1.25 ounce bucktail. I like putting a trailer on the bucktail. Something like an otter tail is really good. On the other end of the 3-way swivel, you're going to have a 10-inch long leader with a surgeon's loop at the end of it with a 10 to 12 ounce sinker. If the current's really ripping, you might have to bump up to a 14, but that's pretty rare. But you also want to make sure that your line that's attached to the sinker is maybe, say, 25 to 40 pound test. You want it to be lighter than the leader material you're using for the bucktail in case you do get snagged, and then that will break off before you lose either your main line or the bucktail itself. You want to drop it down to the bottom, make contact with it, engage your reel, and then just give it 1 crank or 2 cranks just to keep the weight off the bottom. You just want to feel it tick every so often. When you do, give it a half turn or a full turn, and that bucktail is going to float behind it, and you're waiting to feel that tick. It might take you a few drifts to kind of feel what the difference is between a bite or the weight just hitting the bottom, but you'll know when you get bit, it'll feel like something's alive. Another great way to fish the Gut is with a 3-way live line. You can either have a bunker or an eel, and you're going to use the same type of rig that you use for the 3-way bucktail, except you're going to have a circle hook at the end of it. On the other side, you want Same type of situation, a lighter line coming down for your weight, and then usually I like something like an 8 or a 10-ounce sinker just to make sure you hold the bait down. This is a super productive way to catch fish, especially stripers. You do have to be careful though. Certain times of the year the gut is just filled with giant gator bluefish, and you can go through a bunch of bait before you catch a striper. But this is a great way to catch them. It's a lot of fun, especially if you're bringing out somebody that doesn't fish very often. This is a great way to get them to catch a bunch of fish out of the gut. Well, I hope you found this how-to episode on Plum Gut useful. It's one of my favorite places to fish in all of Long Island Sound. Just make sure before you head over there you check the weather and you check the wind. It can get pretty hairy. My recommendation would be to go there with somebody who's been there before and has some experience, and then you can go over by yourself and check it out. When you get a nice day, Plum Gut is amazing. Lots of big blues, lots of big stripers, and the scenery's pretty nice to boot. I really appreciate you watching. Make sure you share this video with your friends. Click the like button, click the subscribe button, and I hope to see you over on Patreon. We'll talk to you real soon. Take care, everybody.